Hello and welcome to today's episode for the CSM Practice, the Customer Success Podcast that brings you all the most innovative tactical advice from the field. And today's guest is Nandini Nag, who serves as the Global Business Development and Strategy Principal at Hitachi Vantara, a 100-year-old legacy company. And Nandini is just not simple expert. She's been doing this for years and have enriched her vast experience by visiting no less than 6 different countries. And in this episode, we're going to discuss how Hitachi Vantara actually leveraged machine learning to segment customers better. So for those who don't know Hitachi Vantara, what can you tell us about the company and the customers you work with?
We are part of the Hitachi conglomerate. There are about 700 companies. We are headquartered in Japan. Hitachi Vantara is a data company. We sell storage hardware on a CapEx model. We have customers all over the globe. Our customers range from governments of sovereign nations, including the US federal government, to companies like Apple and Amazon, and all the way to mid-market companies. We sell directly through our sales force and also through our channel partners because we have a very rich ecosystem of partners comprising of distributors, resellers, independent software vendors, system integrators, what have you.
A lot of companies that listen to this podcast have already done some customer segmentation. They basically take ARR, break it down to different ARR breakout models, and then they serve them in a different engagement model based on that. But you took a different approach. You actually leveraged machine learning to do customer segmentation. Can I ask you why? Why use machine learning? What kind of challenges were you hoping to solve?
Think about it this way. We have been selling hardware for a long time. We have this huge install base of customers. Our salespeople know everything that they have to know about our customers for selling CapEx. What we didn't have is a history of selling excess. So if we are going to transition into excess, the question arises, who should we go after? We cannot go after everyone. I mean, we could, but that would be super unproductive. We don't have a huge budget of demand gen and marketing. We have a limited number of sales resources who are tasked with attaining their targets. So if we just ask them to go and position excess where they think fit, guess what they will do? They have their targets to meet, they have their incentives, they're going to go and pitch capex, not excess, through no fault of theirs. So the question was, how do we find that needle in the haystack? And we were sure there are lots of customers within our install base who would be willing to purchase this, just that we don't know who they are. So given that we don't have a history of selling excess, that's when we came up with this idea of building a Delphi-based machine learning model. So it is a combination of a qualitative and a quantitative approach. The qualitative part is the Delphi part, where we spoke with our salespeople to build these skeleton profiles of customers that we think would be willing to transition to excess, the propensity to buy excess. And then we use that profile to create attributes, more than 25 of them, and fed those attributes into the machine learning model and asked the ML model to identify accounts in our install base that fit the skeletal profiles. We came up with 3 basic profiles. One is early adopters. So these are the customers that we knew would be kind of front in line to move to excess. The second category was transitional. These are the customers who may not be in the market for the first lot offers that we have, but they would be willing to switch maybe in a couple of years' time. And then there are the customers that we have to leave aside, the CapEx model for now, because if we force them to transition, they might abandon us. So that's how we decided to segment our install base. And as you said, customer segmentation is not new. It has been around for ages. What we did was we took our existing segmentation and turbocharged it, looked at it differently using the machine learning models.
I know working with data is very difficult, especially for a legacy company. You must have hundreds of applications where customer data is buried. How did you release your first minimal viable product, your MVP for this initiative? What was your data approach?
I think typically when you do a customer segmentation, you would go looking for it in the sales system. In our case, it's Salesforce CRM. But what we found when we were looking at it was it's not just the sales related data that is important. There's a lot of operational data that we collect. And these are buried in some of our maintenance systems, the customer care systems. And those operational data actually provide more clue as to the usage pattern of customers and helped us identify which accounts would be willing to transition to XaaS. I'll give you an example. Capacity usage, for example. So today we sell a lot of our hardware through the CapEx model, but not all of our customers are using all the capacity that they're buying. In fact, we found two ends of the spectrum. At one end of the spectrum, there were customers who were using more than 90% of the capacity that they bought. And at the other end of the spectrum, there were customers who were using maybe 30% of the capacity. So we decided to go after the customers that were using 30% of the capacity because guess what? They were using cloud to augment the rest of it. Because they were not using a lot of our capacity, they were buying less and less from us. But what they were substituting us with were the cloud providers, the hyperscalers like AWS, GCP. So in those cases, we used the capacity usage to pinpoint the accounts where we could then go and position XaaS instead of a CapEx model.
I was just going to say that's super smart because instead of attacking the entire results, which I'm sure came up with hundreds of accounts, you were just targeting a specific use case. And then from there, you could build a specific campaign or a specific sales playbook.
This is what our distribution looked like at the end of the initial analysis that we did. So we found that actually 1% of our installed base we can go after immediately without having the fear of losing them because they are most likely to transition to XaaS. Then there was a smaller percentage, which we call transitional. But what is revealing is that 90% of our installed base is not yet ready to move to XaaS. Now, when you think about the number of accounts that we can now zero in on, it's still in hundreds, but it's so much better than asking our salespeople to go through thousands and thousands of accounts and find out and figure out who they can go after. When you think about also the demand gen budget that we have, the marketing budgets that we have, we can now prioritize these certain accounts that we have identified as most likely to move to XaaS instead of throwing the kitchen sink or throwing everything to the wall and see what sticks. It's not only a matter of going after the right targets, but it also helps you optimize your marketing budget, your demand gen budget.
Sounds like you identified the early adopters, and from within, depending on specific scenarios, you define what might be happening in that specific situation. And so the salespeople can hone in on the exact pitch and look for the right person within that account that's probably dealing with it. I see all sorts of attributes here, and I can't help but notice that some of them are marked high, some of them are marked low for predictability. How did you guess which one is low, which one is high?
So that's where the Delphi method comes into play. So the Delphi method, this was developed in 1950s. Basically, Delphi method taps into the expertise of a panel of experts to understand how uncertain events could be responded to. In our case, the uncertain event is which of our customers are most likely to move to XaaS. So this is where the field intelligence was very important. We spoke with our sales leads, our salespeople to understand which of these attributes are most likely, which of these attributes have a higher predictability for XaaS. So to give you an example, industry or vertical, as we call it, that is not a good predictor. Not a geo or the location of the customer, not a good predictor. But capacity utilization, very good predictor. That's why we gave it a high predictability. Certain things like, for example, how many times a year they are buying from us. That is also a medium to high predictor because if they're buying more frequently and not using it, it shows that maybe there's something going on within their organization where parts of the usage is being controlled by certain departments. So that's how we came up with the initial model. Now, the beauty of the model is that it is dynamic. It's not one and done. You have created it, you have assigned the weights, you have determined the certain predictability. Now you hand it over to the salespeople to road test it, to stress test it, and they can feed it back. They can provide you feedback on what works and what doesn't work. So what we can learn is, okay, maybe some of the attributes that we thought are not that important are now more important. Or maybe some of the ones that we thought were high are not that high, maybe they are medium. So think about it as constantly tweaking and pulling the levers up and down and perfecting it. And it's going to be an ongoing process. And the more data you get, like any other AI or machine learning model, the better and more refined it becomes.
This is interesting the way that you've done it. And I could totally see if somebody has a huge customer base, some of it comprises of smaller or medium sized customers that you typically can just hire enough salespeople or enough CSMs or account managers to handle all of them. Certainly, if you have partners dealing with them, you absolutely need to lean on data and advanced technologies to get the most out of it. What was the initial impact that you've seen right after you released the first list?
So the first impact was we could develop specific sales plays based on these lists. We have excellent salespeople, obviously, but if you empower them with a list like that, where they know exactly which accounts they're going to go after, what are the sales plays, what are the value props, and most importantly, we are switching the conversation from selling assets and hardware to selling outcomes. It's no longer that, okay, I'm going to sell you a block storage that would last you for 4 years, and then 4 years later I'm going to come and have a conversation about a refresh. In the meantime, you pay us for maintenance, blah blah blah. So that entire paradigm changes. So now we are talking to you about, okay, you have AI workloads, maybe your cloud bill is too high. How are you going to optimize that? How do you move some of your workloads from whatever bills you are getting from Amazon or Google to some of the hybrid cloud offerings that HV has, so that you're getting the same experience, but you're still paying OPEX, you're still paying subscription, but you're paying at a lower rate. If you have AI workloads, maybe your energy costs are high. And that is also something which we are building into our model to see what is their power usage from their existing infrastructure. So if your energy costs are high, we can maybe work with you to come up with some energy SLAs where, given the sustainability benefits that Hitachi provides, we can bring down your energy costs. And I'll have to brag a little bit here, Irit, with your permission. We take sustainability so seriously, and Hitachi's VSP storage has recently gotten Energy Star Awards. You can check it out on our website. We are at least 30% better in energy consumption and savings compared to some of our peers like 𝘧𝘪, for example. So this is built into our product. But guess what? If you sell it as CapEx, you're not going to get the benefits of it. If instead you sell it as an energy SLA, where you're selling energy savings as an outcome, it becomes a different conversation. And with customer segmentation that we have created, we know exactly who to talk to. Our salespeople know how to approach that conversation so that they can make the sales easier. In terms of immediate impact, I think we are keeping an eye on the pipeline, the velocity and the volume of it, because we are at the beginning stage of our XaaS transition. So as we go through it, we are trying to build our pipeline. So hopefully that would translate into more and more ARR over the next few years.
So it sounds like the immediate success indicators and an impact that you're seeing is one, changing the conversation from selling a widget to selling an outcome, and B, productivity for the sales rep. So instead of tackling the entire account base, they actually can zero in on a specific accounts or a specific account cohort with a specific problem and know exactly what to say so that they can get the engagement a lot faster.
100%.
What percentage of productivity do you think you improved by now?
There would be at least 10 to 20% improvement in the productivity just because we have created a funnel. So we have gone from hundreds and thousands of accounts to a few hundred that now we can distribute to our salespeople, and they can focus on these few hundred instead of wondering which ones they would go after and who they should talk to. And the good thing is, even if they're getting some failures, even if they're not hitting the mark on all of it, they can feed that back to us, to our team, and tell us that, okay, maybe this is where you need to tweak it because this is an account that you said would buy, but they're not buying for XYZ reason. So we change the attribute. Maybe we take out some attributes, we introduce some new attributes. So it's a constant improvement process. So it's almost like DevOps. You're rolling it out, you're testing it, you're improving it. It's ongoing. It's not like one and done and you're throwing it over the fence and letting people deal with it. No. So they're involved. They have been involved right from the start, and they are going to be involved to make this model a whole lot better.
Yeah, essentially, you're giving them a service of being more productive and more focused on what matters. Where do you think this is going? Like, can you apply the same model or framework to other areas besides finding opportunity for the SaaS?
We use it for our legacy businesses also because you have created this whole data lake. This is centralized model which has a view of all the attributes across our install base. So even if we are going to devise some sales plays for our existing products, we can, for example, look at, okay, is this a NetApp shop? NetApp is one of our key competitors. Is this somewhere where HP GreenLake is present? So we can create competitive plays based on those kind of attributes also. And that is not necessarily excess. That's part of your legacy CapEx model that you can use it. Another, I would say, byproduct of this kind of segmentation is it helps you validate your excess business case. So those of us who are in the middle of this, you know that if you are going to transition to excess, you'd have to make a lot of investments upfront. Swallowing the fish, what TSIA tells us. Your costs are going to go up because you have to spend, whether it's in infrastructure, in your products, in your demand gen, in building up customer success teams, while your revenue is going to dip because you're not going to get the upfront payments that you're used to getting. So there's huge gap between the cost and the revenue, which is the belly of the fish. That's the swallowing the fish part. What this does, it helps reduces some of the pain because you know what you're going to get. If you are, for example, a sales lead and you're being given, let's say, a 5 million ARR target next year, you take a look at your early adopters, the number of accounts that you can go after, and you can make an assessment as to whether you're going to be able to hit this target or not. If you're a finance, if you're the CFO and you're evaluating the investment, you can combine the business case and validate the assumptions using this kind of customer targeting model to say that, okay, you're telling me in 2 years we are going to hit 50 million. Let me take a look at the customer database, the customer segmentation that you're creating. And if your max is, let's say, 200 customers, how many of those do you have to hit the ARR targets that you're laying out in 2 years' time or 5 years' time? So there are a whole lot of uses that you can put this model to once you have built it.
I love that because the model essentially gives you a specific probability of 80% or more, as you said. So you can actually make the case, well, if we give you X number of leads and we know that the average sale is X dollars, this is how long it takes us to close it on average, then you can fairly accurately predict what's going to happen in a year or two.
Exactly. The ultimate ambition for us is obviously to transition our entire install base to XaaS. But let's be realistic. It's not going to happen in 1 year or 2 year. That's 5 year, 6 year project. And that is accelerated if we are lucky. We are not like Microsoft where they can just ask people to move and people will move. Our products don't have that level of stickiness. We are also not like Adobe, who basically did a forcible transition of all their customer base to XaaS. But if you look at most of the companies that have done it, like Intuit and others, the transition has been chaotic. So, what we wanted to avoid is that chaotic transition because we have built up these relationships with our customers. Our customers trust us. Our products are unbreakable. We take pride in that. Yes, we want to move to XaaS, but we didn't want to jeopardize that relationship. And this was a huge tool of making sure that we don't do that because you're only going after the ones who are most likely to transition at the beginning. Think about an Apple product coming up, and who are the people who are sitting in front of the Apple store 2, 3 days ago? Those are our guys, those are our people that we want to go after.
Nandini, this was wonderful. I love this conversation and I've learned so much and you were so patient with everything. So thank you so much. You're amazing. I hope you come back in 2 years' time and tell us what else you've done. Obviously, this is a brilliant move for your company, but it just showcases what is happening in the industry for legacy companies like Hitachi Vantara that's been in business for 100 years and how their business is gradually changing with the upkeep of times.
Absolutely.
And with that, it's a wrap. Big love from me. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, give this video a like. It always helps the channel. Subscribe if you haven't yet. And I'll see you on the next video.